Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And this is a Lotus Elise 135R that was a total loss that I picked up some time ago. And it had damage all around, and the cost was too high actually to get it repaired. But I decided to do it so anyway. So the car has been hitting in the front a post, and the whole crash box was gone. Also in the back, you can see that everything is really ripped apart. So the main thing on the Lotus Elise is the crash box, and if you have to replace that, that's a lot of work. Now in the back, you could see the wire there. That's part of the fence. It did hit it. So the first thing I did was to make sure that the car was still straight, and then I started to replace all the different parts. One of the main parts to replace was actually the lower wishbones and the pull rod, making sure that everything is still straight and replaceable. Now, the crash box in the front, that was one hell of a job to remove it. And here I'm actually fitting a new crash box onto the frame. And it's important that you glue it onto the aluminum frame. So I'm using some catalyzers and some sticky glue, kind of the same glue that people use for gluing in windscreens. Now I aligned the crash box before, so all I need to do now is put it back into place and make sure that my markers are correct, because if the crash box is not fitted right, we have an issue. So then was time for the radiators and the housing around it and the tow bar in the front. So all these little pieces were new, because I had no choice. I also had a new radiator, although the old one was still good. I added also a new fan. So the front part mechanically was then almost complete. But of course there was still work to be done on the suspension and on the brakes. But at least my crash box is now in. And I think I spent about 2 days getting the crash box really properly in place, and the shroud for the radiator. On the Lotus Elise, everything is pretty much condensed, so you don't have a lot of space to connect things up. And this is all about the front shroud, and then we have the aluminum plate on the bottom. So then it was time to change the ball joints on the suspension, and here you see me removing the old ball joints. And I replaced them with adjustable racing ball joints, and this was just trying to put it together. Afterwards, I actually had cleaned up the wishbones as well. I also replaced the brake shoes, but also replaced the rear axle, because that rear axle was damaged, as you have seen by that wire before. And here I'm putting in new drive shafts in the back. The discs will be replaced later, but here I'm just trying to fit it and see how all that would fit together, just to make sure everything is okay. If you look closely, you see the upper wishbone is still damaged. And of course, for any trial, I'm putting things together as they should be with the proper torque. Now it was time for the upper and the lower wishbones to put in new bushes. And in fact, I replaced that one wishbone in the back because that was bad. But I went all around the car with new bushes for the wishbones, so it gives you a more sturdy ride. And then it was time to check out the discs. Now the discs turned out to be not that good anymore, so I replaced them with vented aluminum bell discs, and that of course is a lot better. I then reworked and rebuilt the brake calipers. We also reworked the upper wishbones, and here you see the final result, including new steel braided hose pipes. And then I decided as well, when I was at it, to change all the wheel bearings, because I could do it all in one go. And here you see me fitting the new wheel bearing in the front. And then I had to put everything back together, bleed the brakes, and then we were good to go basically with the wheels. Now I had also to make some new linkage, and the handbrake, you can see that one right there. The handbrake cable was kind of corroded, so I changed that one. But as you can see, the whole rear side looked like brand new because I had to replace everything. That bar right there is the tow bar, so tow in or tow out. Now, one of the nasty things on a Lotus Elise is actually changing the cables for the stick shift. That is very, very painful, and it took me a long time to get those in because you have to take a lot of things apart, as you can see. But once I got the new cables in, it shifted really, really nicely, much better than before, and I did my first test ride with it. So the good thing about this car is that it has an aluminum tub. So now I could adjust the camber and the toe in and the toe out, making sure that the car is really lined out. And I do this the old way. I'm using some ropes and some levels. That just works perfect. You don't need fancy tools for this. And then I had to use some spacers to adjust the camber, and you slide them in between the wheel hub and the upright. Now it was time for some more body work. So as you have seen, the right-hand side of the car had some serious damage, so the sill has to be removed. And here I'm removing the sill from the aluminum frame, the tub, and piece by piece, carefully, because there are tubes inside, so you really want to take your time to do it. So now I have removed the entire sill and I'm fitting a new sill. I'm just trial fitting it and putting the markers up where I have to cut what, because these sills, they come complete, but if you're going to fit it on an existing car, you will have to cut out certain areas. So you want to make sure that all this fits. Here I'm fitting the door and making sure that everything lines up. So now I'm going to put the new sill up as a trial to make sure that everything is okay. Of course, I have it painted already in the paint shop, and I'm making some additional markings here because I need to have some aluminum strengthening points in the back. And I will glue that on there to the polyester. And here I'm just banding it to the right form on my stretcher. And we're going to stick it to the frame basically and to the polyester sill. Now I'm going to use some carbon now to prime the aluminum. And then when that is primed with this black stuff, I will apply the glue to it. And then we can press on the new sill. And it's a pretty big sill, and here I'm actually applying the sealant or the glue, and this is something you have to do in a fairly quick time, but as I have everything marked and lined up before, this went fairly smoothly. And here I'm putting some enforcement up because that's the kind of thing you have to do. And always use this primer because otherwise the glue isn't going to work too well. And here the car is coming pretty nicely together. Now it was time for the rear clamshell. I got a second-hand one, but I had to repair it here and there. But that's just polyester. And then I painted in my paint booth and it was ready to be installed on the car. As I am a one-man show, basically, I'm using an engine lift to put the clamshell into place. It isn't very hard, but it takes a little bit of fiddling. And here you see me fixing the guard underneath the car. It also streamlines the air. And this is the front shell that I got. This is also a second-hand one. The one on the little sprouts is the new one, but the one on the floor is the old one. But even the new one, which is a second-hand one, has some damage on it. So I had to fix that. So I'm grinding it down. And then I'm cutting out some patterns here because I like to fix sometimes these polyester shells with an aluminum panel, as you can see here. And again, I'm going to use a good primer to glue that to the polyester shell. It makes it extremely strong because this area is a weak spot. It's maybe not what most people do, but this has always worked very well for me. And here it's kind of painted black. So now it was time to put the headlights in, and the headlights are using a kind of a pocket. And here you see that pocket. And that has to be glued onto the shell as well. And of course, I had to prepare some matting in polyester to make sure that everything fits properly and tight, because after all, that's where your headlights go in. And here my front clamshell is in essence painted. And now I'm going to put it onto the front of the car, and I'm taping off some areas on the car because I don't want to scratch anything, and you can see that on the edges of the shell or the clamshell, but also on the car itself. And now it's time to final fit the lamps and the lenses, and I'm just checking things out where all the nuts and bolts are, and here I'm putting it together, and we are almost done. So there's a few little things still to be done, and that was done afterwards. And then unfortunately I have sold the car, which I shouldn't have done. I should have kept the car. Thank you for viewing. Bye-bye.